Welcome back to another episode of Cooped Up. So now that it's fall, I've decided I should probably show you what I do to prep the chicken coop for winter. Chickens are pretty winter hardy, especially the breeds that I have. So they don't need a lot, but there are a few things you should always double check, especially on your coop, and especially before the snow falls, because you don't want to be struggling at the last minute to make sure your ladies are safe and happy. So I'm going to give you a little tour of what I do for winter prep, and maybe that'll help you guys out too. So one of the first things you want to do in late autumn is give your coop a really good inspection and the run. You want to inspect it and make sure that there's no loose wires, broken pieces, especially because this is the time of year when the predators are trying to fatten up for winter, and chickens are an easier target than something out there. So I want to make sure that the run and the coop are definitely secure. The chickens are definitely going to spend more time inside in the winter time because they don't like snow, versus free ranging around. So that's my first step, is to give it a good inspection. So while you're looking over your coop and run, you want to make sure, the wires are secure, that none of the ties or screws that you use have gotten loose. You want to make sure that nothing has been digging. So I'm going to check the base of the run really good. Again, I have some hardware cloth and buried underneath these cinder blocks, so it's doubly secure. Good morning, ladies. They're wondering what I'm doing. But yeah, it's very important to make sure that it's nice and secure. And then I have a tarp as the roof of our run, so I'm gonna double check all of the connections here, make sure the tarp's not ripped, just so I can keep the snow and wet out. Now, for the coop itself, I'll go inside and make sure that this hardware cloth is secure. I also want to prevent drafts from coming in on the ladies, because the wind is probably their biggest enemy in the winter. And so I have this piece of pink foam that I've cut, and I just stick those in the windows when it gets really cold. It helps create a draft, or prevent drafts, but it still leaves a little space for ventilation. I don't want to seal up the coop so tight that they can't get any fresh air. So those will be put in once it starts to get below freezing. Another important thing to keep in mind for winter is how you store your chickens' food, because mice are definitely going to be drawn to it and other rodents. So it's best to keep the food off the ground in the coop or the run. So I use a hanging feeder, so it's just a few inches off the ground. The chickens can still reach, but then it's not as easy of a target for mice. And I also store my chicken food in galvanized metal trash cans with the lid. That keeps a nice tight seal, keeps the mice out, keeps the food fresh, and that way, we don't get unwanted critters. So here's an example of the type of bin I keep the chicken food in. And then you can see I just had the bag in there too, so the bag keeps it from getting, yucky, stays fresh longer. But the lid goes on nice and tight, keeps the mice out. It's in the garage right next to our coop, so I can just get up in the morning and feed them. And again, I found that that's the best way to keep it rodent-free. Probably the most important thing to consider for chickens in the winter when you're getting ready is you got to make sure that they always have fresh water. You don't want their water to freeze. And you definitely don't want to use a plastic water container, because once it does freeze, if it freezes solid, it's going to crack your plastic, and then you won't, it'll be no good to you anymore. There are many different types of waterers out there for chickens, especially there's heated ones, fancy metal ones that can plug in, but the one that I've found works the best is I actually use a heated dog bowl. They're not too expensive, but they have this cord on them, and so you can plug it in and it just warms up the base of the bowl, and it's heavy enough that the chickens can't tip it over. So I like to use this when the temperatures get below freezing. It doesn't hold as much water, but if you fill it once or twice, twice a day probably, the ladies will get plenty to drink. And we do have an outlet here on our garage with an extension cord so that I can plug in the water at night and not worry about it freezing. The ladies will always have fresh water. You don't need to supply heat to your coop because chickens already have really warm body temperatures. Their average blood temperature is a lot higher than a human's. It's actually 103 degrees, their body heat is. So they're actually able to stay pretty warm, especially with all their feathers. And if you prevented the drafts from coming in to the coop while still providing a way to ventilate, and you keep them from getting wet, then they'll stay pretty warm. The only time I would supplement with any heat is like a couple years ago when we had the polar vortex and it was like -40. I did stick that chick warmer that I have, the mother hen, inside the coop, and just so that it gave off a little radiant heat. It's not large enough for the ladies, a full-size hen to sit underneath and warm up, but it could warm up a corner of the coop, so if they were feeling a little chilly, they could huddle together there, and that would keep them from getting any chill. But chickens are pretty hardy and they know to huddle together to stay warm, so you really don't have to worry too much about heat. Please don't use a heat lamp. I know they're sold at all of the hardware stores and the farm stores, and yes, they are important and they are a usable item if you're very, very careful, but a heat lamp in a chicken coop is, if it's not a very special, safely built kind, and it's just a generic bare bulb, it's dangerous. Definitely can start a fire, it gets super hot. I would just really not recommend it. That's my personal opinion. I don't want any of you to have property damage or to lose your chickens because of a fire. So I just want you to know that they are generally very winter hardy. They will be safe if they are warm and out of the cold wind, and especially if you have a group of chickens, they'll keep each other warm. So that's what I'm going to be doing the next couple of weeks, prepping the coop, making sure that they're safe and happy, and that everything's secure and we're ready to go, so when the snow does fly we don't have to scramble at the last second. But I hope you all are well and safe and enjoying these last few days of autumn. Autumn's beautiful and we need to enjoy it while we can, because it's Wisconsin and winter is coming. So, well, we'll see you next time.